Cancel.
Schweezy.
The next thing I watched on Discovery Plus. I may be one of the few people in the world who has Discovery Plus. But anyways, though, they just uploaded. Is that how they just uploaded, like it was on YouTube or whatever. They just released a documentary. I think it might be a Discovery Plus original. Not 100% sure. They have a ton of channels on there. Hillsong, a Megachurch Exposed, which for those of you who don't know, if you're new to the show or if you somewhat new to the show, I grew up super Christian. Like I'll say, I think I stopped with the Christian shit. I think it was 23. I'm 28, going to be 29 in August. So, I mean, I've been out of it for a couple years now. And so I'm definitely on the ex-evangelical system. And when a lot of this was big and stuff like that, I was kind of there for the most part and kind of knew at least something was going on. And so I grew up in the Christian, and I was I went full throttle.
Let's go full throttle.
Into it, like for the longest time. So if I'm making fun of this shit, hopefully you know that I was into this, and so I do have somewhat of something to say when I talk about this. But hopefully, yeah, I will. I want to talk about this documentary. Not a lot of things in this like surprised me too much. I know mega churches are really, when they're talking about like, yeah, they're only into it for the money and they're only into it for fame and fortune. I'm like, yeah, that doesn't really surprise me. But there's some other shit here. And I'm like, not a lot of things in this surprised me that much. Just to kind of be honest with you. Before watching this, what I know of Hillsong is I knew they were a church. I knew they had like a kind of college type thing out in Australia, and there's probably one timeline where I actually went out there to that timeline to do that, because at one point I think I might have been like a worship leader, like studied to like a Christian college to be a worship leader or whatever. There's a timeline where I became that, and so I always knew Hillsong from the music. They always, in their conferences, and they always had these. They always went really well on the radio. I should ask my friend Chris. He's been working in Christian radio forever at this point, and they always had big hits on Christian radio, and so like a lot of churches would be playing their shit and stuff like that. And they had conferences too. I think Passion was one of theirs. I don't think Passion was one of theirs, but probably there are millions of songs or they performed there at those. So, Hillsong is big. I probably learned at least like 50 plus of their songs in my lifetime. And you're like, that's a lot of songs. I'm like, not really for me. It's interesting. Like they record all their music. They get all their albums are recorded live, which, if you don't know, if you're recording a live album, minus the people on stage making sure they play everything really well, is very easy, because a lot of times you just set up like a couple mics or get a direct feed into like Pro Tools or Logic or something, and that's you just record it live, do a little bit of editing. I've heard bands, they record an album live, burn the CDs, and then they're selling the CDs at the show you were at, like that fast. Like it was insane. I've always known Hillsong for their music. I know in like the 2010s and shit like that, their church was really big, and what was I trying? Yeah, their church was really big, and I remember, Chris Pratt was joining them, which now we figured out. Pretty sure he was like having multiple different affairs at there. I know Carl Lentz, which we're going to be talking about a lot. He was a big celebrity pastor, and he was always hanging out with like Justin Bieber and other people like that. So he was big, like Justin Bieber's pastor and stuff like that. Back when I used to read everything from Relevant magazine, which I recently, a couple years ago, I was like, this stuff sucks. Because I think I'll admit to, like, I really stopped doing the Christian shit when Trump became president. I'm like, even like the progressive churches that aren't against Trump are all in it for money. Like that's what they're all into and shit like that. And it was just disgusting to me. And I was like, I'm out of church. I'm like, if you want to ask my beliefs, we can do that on another podcast. But for the most part, yeah, I was just really disgusted. And it mainly goes over Carl Lentz and Brian Houston. Going over Carl Lentz to begin with, there's like a picture of him like hanging out with Justin Bieber. There's a million pictures of him with Justin Bieber, and like his pants are sagged a little bit so you can see his dick V, which people who are in really good shape, like they have the dick V, which women do like, but I'm like, don't you want a guy who's a little bit thicker? Because if he has a little bit of a stomach, he'll binge drink with you. He's not going to pressure you too much on your body or at all on your body. And when you get drunk, you just get to eat a lot of food. Saying that from experience, ladies. But yeah, no, like you look at him and he's like a super pretentious human being. Like, I guess there was like, they talked about a like Instagram account called Preachers and Sneakers, and they would just like find the sneakers or whatever shoes and clothing these pastors were wearing, and then they post like the price of it and stuff like that. And so he'd be wearing like these, he's trying to be like this very hip, trendy, celebrity pastor type guy, wearing thousands of dollars worth of clothing, which we later learned paid with church funds, which is not how you're supposed to be spending church funds, unless it goes to your paycheck and then you buy it from there. But church funds would try to make it so these pastors looked really good. And, you meet people in the way they dress, Nashville and stuff like that. If you look kind of pretentious, if you dress kind of pretentiously, you are pretty pretentious. That's just how it is. I'm so happy I'm not in like the Christian scene anymore, because those people just annoy me. That fucking, like, you have to dress a certain way and shit like that. But the best thing ever was he was always talking shit on people who were having premarital sex and, and stuff like that. Like, that was his big thing. He's probably homophobic too, but he was always talking shit on people who were into premarital sex. And that was his downfall, because they talked about like an affair he had with a girl. It's really sad because this girl was like just with him or whatever. And then he was like telling her shit like, I have a family to go back to. You have no one. And it's like, okay, bitch, whatever. Like, he's just a big dick. I mean, like, if you weren't such a dick to people you were counseling, you're like, premarital sex is bad, and we need you to break up because you're having premarital sex. But then you're going out doing this shit. Just my thing is, if you're a pastor and you're somehow stumbling across this, if you're doing like a shitty thing, that's technically not good for in the Bible or whatever, don't preach about it. Just kind of try to avoid it, That's what I'm saying. So when you get caught with it, people are not going to make a big deal about what you're doing.
What?
Because you're like, well, he wasn't, like, when you're adamant about something and then you get caught doing that thing, it's bad. And I'm just saying, like, if you're going to have an affair on your wife, don't try to do millions of sermons about having premarital sex or cheating on your wife or whatever. It's just a suggestion out there for all the pastors out there being shitty. And so I guess he eventually got fired from Hillsong, but it was also a weird thing where like Hillsong does like try to cover up a lot of the bad, dirty shit they do. Like you hear all these women talking about like getting sexually assaulted by Hillsong people, and they try to sweep it under the rug and stuff like that just to make sure that the Hillsong brand is good and stuff like that. So yeah, they fired him because I think he was probably going to break off and try to do his own thing. Which if you're Carl Lentz, it's probably a good idea. But Brian Houston, like they're hiding all these. They had this one girl on there. She was talking about being like sexually assaulted. She was mainly getting groped, so she wasn't technically raped, but enough where it's like, hey, I'm uncomfortable because a guy was really drunk. Which that's weird when you're drunk, because I think drunk sex is overrated. Sorry to offend some of you.
White people.
That was way too close to.
Pretty bold of you little fucks to assume that I'm not God.
Just because it's hard to get your pee-pee hard when you're drunk. Now, some of you be thinking, I don't have that problem. I take heavy antidepressants. So, sober me can sometimes have that problem. So, that's my thing. Anyways, though, drunk sex is overrated, folks. That's all I have to say. And you're not smart. Just send your dumb text. That's all you have to do. And they just do that. And then the biggest, obviously their college is also bullshit too. Well, what did they do in their college? They made people red light, or like a green light or red light them. Like did you have premarital sex in the past year? Did you smoke a cigarette in the past year? And like, these kids are like Christians, so they want to answer honestly. And like, I would have just lied just to make things easy. Like, honestly, that's what I would have done. But no. And to be honest, all the people they interviewed on this part, a lot of good-looking people here. And I have to, and I'm not shaming anyone who they interviewed on this show, but probably intentional of Hillsong trying to show off a lot of the good-looking people, or very much recruiting a lot of good-looking people. It's just helping them sell their brand. And then they finally, I think the final thing was Frank Houston. What was his fucking name? Brian Houston, yeah. His dad, way too into kids. Like, sounds like that was all he was attracted to. And like, they recorded like when he was like kind of kicked off of Hillsong, and then he did a guest sermon somewhere else, and he's like, they got the recording of him talking about all these kids being good looking in front of them. I'm like, bro, like, I love my dad, and if I found out my dad was doing that shit, I'm like, look, I don't condone anything my father did, and his dad's dead, so you can say whatever the fuck you want about your dad. I'd be like, I don't condone what my dad did, and I'm very ashamed. That does not represent our brand, and we tried to make sure we took care of that back then, and we still try to live up to that now. I feel like their PR isn't handling things the best way. They're trying to do what's an easy fix, but it's not the best way to handle a situation, which that's how we're ending this. I want to know your opinions for anyone watching or listening. How would you think Hillsong should have handled all the sexual assault, all the cheating, and all the bad shit they did to try to make themselves a better product? Like, I don't think there is any like good situation they could have got themselves into, but
that's my hole. That's where it spits.
Hey, you just finished one of the many, many highlights from Cancel Schweezy. We got plenty more on the channel, so make sure you hit that subscribe button, and if you like what you just watched, go ahead and smash that like button as well. Go subscribe for more so we can teach you how to be a better human in our world. So, stay awesome.